me, climate change is one of the biggest issues of our time, and natural ecosystems are so important to ensuring, climate stability and ecosystem stability, and making sure that, if we have like massive rainstorms, we have a healthy ecosystem that can, help buffer that instead of just having massive flooding like what you saw in Spain last year. So it is super important. I mean, the most important issue to me in every way. The bigger environmental concerns for me is just the complete gutting of anything related to climate action. So things like halting the construction of an offshore wind project in New York that's literally like under construction. If you're talking about we want to build American industry, that doesn't make any sense to me. I think with regards to like forestry and the Forest Service, I mean, I have somewhat more of a nuanced take on this. I don't really have faith in the current administration to do things in a way that's going to actually benefit sustainability. However, given the current state of a lot of our Forest Service lands here in Western Washington, actually doing some amount of ecological forestry would actually be extremely beneficial. I have friends that work in that sector, so they work with landowners to figure out, okay, you have this land that was a tree farm, and now you still want to manage it in a more ecological way. You can do things like ecological thinning. A lot of the places in the national forest you can actually do commercial thinning, where you'd cut down like half the trees. Even here on Cougar Mountain, where the park leadership is basically 100% focused on managing the land for ecological purposes, they are they've done some thinning and replanted it with a more diverse mix of species that will help it grow into a more healthy old growth characteristic. So all of that to say, I think there are ways that you can, do logging in a way that benefits forest health, and we've seen great examples of that actually right here on Cougar Mountain. But do I have faith that the current federal administration will do things in that way, or do I think that they're probably going to do things in the way that maximizes, profit for large logging companies? Probably the latter, given everything else that the current administration is doing. But I don't want, I think I don't want it to be that I feel like a lot of people are in such a reactive mode, where like everything that's happening is horrible, which, don't get me wrong, it is horrible, but I think we need to say, there are things, if we continued with the status quo and don't do anything, I mean, these forests that are super dense are super unhealthy, they're more fire prone, and so what are some of the things that we can do, like, thinning and prescribed fire, and also like other restoration projects that can decrease wildfire risk, which is a huge concern for people across the American West, while also, potentially getting some more revenue for the Forest Service to do a lot of the trail maintenance and other improvements for outdoor access that we need. So what would I say to people who think climate change isn't real? I would say, even in the heartland of America, people are seeing the economic effects of, changes in weather patterns. For example, hail is a huge problem. With, the changes in weather patterns, there's like large, golf ball sized hail, which causes billions of dollars every year in economic damages to agriculture and crops. That's something that, that's happening in the American heartland today, and we need to do everything we can to mitigate that. I would also say clean energy is now the cheapest source of new energy nationwide. Texas is actually building out a ton of solar and wind because of the way that their energy market works. And in a lot of places, it is the cheapest source of new energy, and we need to be doing everything that we can to push that forward. There's a lot of American businesses that are employing, millions of people building out clean energy infrastructure. And I think that's really important to have that continue. This idea of historical preservation is like keeping things in amber the way they are now. And, similar to what Curtis said, 100 years ago, this was essentially like a wasteland following coal mining. And the things that have grown back, it's a lot of, alders and big leaf maples, which it's actually, a nice ecosystem, but it's not really emblematic of what a healthy old growth forest is. And so conservation actually requires sometimes changing things, like, we were talking about thinning out some of the alders and planting conifers like cedars and Douglas firs, which can create a healthier long-term ecosystem. I think, one of the most empowering things is just getting involved locally and digging in the dirt. It's very satisfying to, dig up a blackberry, think of it, and get your rage out in some ways. and feel like you're actually making a tangible difference. Because I think, you know, oftentimes it's so easy to just be depressed about what's going on in the world and like doom scroll and all that, which to be fair, I do that too. But you know, getting out there and doing something in the community is a great way to, first of all, you know, feel like you're making a difference, meet like-minded people, and, you know, do things to make your community better, which is really important.